Hey guys, I am Vincent, the director of the film in Russia, together with my friends Tim and Mux, who did camera and editing on the project. We're doing this little Q&A about the film, as promised, answering all the many questions we got over the last few weeks. Thank you very much for that. It got a lot longer than expected as we mostly just rambled on and on, so we decided to divide it up into parts. One about the shooting itself, one is about the technical side of things, one is about the post-production. And then this one right here is about the planning and preparation. So like, why Russia at all? How did you approach the project and so on? We did put timestamps in the description so you can navigate through the whole thing easily. Yeah, and with that being said, have fun.
Just the question why comes a lot about this movie, but also why Russia? Why are we doing this about Russia?
I guess a lot of people know that, but there's also a lot of newcomers to the series. So I've done these kind of films very often. I started in 2010 with a series about Asia and then South America and Turkey and Morocco and all kinds of places. I guess the general answer to the question why is it's part of a series of travel films. The more specific one, the why Russia, I think it was end of 2018. I saw a picture of Lake Baikal in winter, and I was just absolutely amazed about this picture. And at the same time, I was super confused that I just didn't know this. Usually, from all kinds of natural phenomenon on this world, you've either heard of or seen a picture, or most of them, even if you haven't visited them. But this was just something like, huh, I've never seen this. Then quickly came the thought, like, I want to shoot something there or want to go there and want to see it, but I mean, you kind of need to have a reason and not just like randomly shoot something. And basically at the same time as my first time when I went to Moscow for a couple of days in winter. And there was another moment where I was a little bit just surprised. A lot of other cities, I have a clear visual picture of what they are and how they feel like, even before coming there from movies or from whatever. But Moscow, I just didn't. So I just thought it's super interesting that it's Russia is such a huge country, and when you look at the world map, you see this huge place. But for most part, I think a lot of us don't really know what's there, and it felt a little bit like somewhat of an end boss of travel films because it's super complicated. It's very large. It's hard to get to. It's cold. It also it's a very cluttered and how to say complicated national identity to portray.
So many people ask, how were you able to do this? Because you just told us the country is so big. Was it commissioned by anyone? Is there a client behind this film? Who paid for this?
So there's no sponsor or no I guess commissioner. I don't, but no sponsor, no not anything out of Russia or from anywhere financed it. There's no client in that kind of sense. Our production company, 27 kilometers in Hamburg, I told the boss of that company about the idea, and he was very happy to support us to shoot this. That's where the money came from, and but we were absolutely independent, and nobody basically told us what we have to film, what we have to do, and what we have to show. That was all our own doing.
True. There's another question from Anna, which wraps up the general idea a little bit. She's asking, what is the goal of the project?
I think that's the hardest one from all of them.
Yeah, of course.
I think I never really thought about it that way because that's, I guess, in general for me, I like traveling. I like seeing these places, and I like learning about cultures, and I like making films. So it's we have all done this in our free time. So this is like a hobby. We like to do that, but there's no greater goal. I think for all of us as filmmakers, we like to make films, and then we also have something to present to others, which is also cool. We like to do something and challenge ourselves. But in general, there's no goal.
Let's go a little bit more into preparation. How long and deep was the study of Russia before you began, and or did you just visit it for the film? And what was your first impression? So
Yeah. So
what was your first impression, guys?
I'll go over my whole preparation in the next question. But I can say I prepared around. It started 4 months before our first trip. I think the real preparation began. I think for you guys, you did not have any real preparation. So what was your first impression when you got there?
It was really nice, actually. Like I expected, or when I left, actually, my mother said, be careful. But then I went to, or we actually went together to Ethiopia before, and that one was much more sketchy, and my mother didn't say anything. So this was like, okay, do you have to be careful? And then we went, and it was super nice. Was super nice weather in May.
Yeah, especially the first trip to Moscow, because when we first traveled there, I had stereotypes in my mind. For sure, I was thinking the main color I was thinking about was gray. I expected a completely different city than Moscow actually is. Moscow is super modern. It's so clean there that really changed my mind and my view on this country. So many people ask this. How do you plan this sort of trip?
You can plan any kind of travel film, not only specifically this one, but any kind of travel film, basically just by pretending being a absolutely over motivated tourist that looks at every travel guide, at every website, looks at photos, looks like where is the best light conditions anywhere. A lot of map markers. So this is basically the way how it ended up at the end. This is our Russia map with dots all over the place, which is basically just a big collection of things that I found interesting. And obviously, we did not go to all these places. There's a lot of places that were super interesting, which we had to cut. We can talk about this later. But yeah, that's what you do. You have a lot of markers, and then I put photos in there. And this is like to kind of remember what
He looks nice.
Oh, look, that was a Salakar photo.
Actually,
I know this place.
But this is the general start for something like this, just like looking for places and stuff that's interesting. I think that's the first step. The second step is, which I did not do for all the other travel videos, but which I did for this one now, because I thought it should also be somewhat of not only a landscape or touristic portrait, but also a little bit of a cultural and historical portrait, and focusing on the people and the cultures and the society. So I watched a 25 series, The Cultural History of Russia. This was what I watched. Understanding Russia, A Cultural History. It was very long. It's, I think, 30 minutes each episode.
It's very long.
But it was also fun and super interesting. It was really interesting because it's also, as I said, not only focusing just on history and the wars and stuff, but how the culture came to be and the arts, and it was fascinating.
Yeah, I want to come back to the locations again where you showed the pictures, because Lorena asked us, how many locations did you shoot and how do you make a selection out of this?
You have this huge list and have to check it against reality. Like, what can you actually do? What is feasible in a logistical way? Where can you go? How much time do you have? How much money do you have? And a lot of the stuff then falls out. And the falling out process, what she's asking about, is, of course, a very subjective. It's something like, hey, now I want to go there rather than there. I think a lot of the reasons why the South isn't there in so much, because I was just more interested in the northern regions. But the other one is you really have to see and check if this is something special and if the content tells you anything about Russia or not. and not just something that's pretty in itself. We have our own little test to do that. Maybe Tim, you can explain what our own testing system is.
Yes, of course I can. Well, I think the best test is like, can you shoot this in a place you know? I'm from Gütersloh. I was born and raised there. It's a small town in the middle of Germany, which is okay, but not like really super super extraordinary or something like that. And that's really something we came up on. I think on this trip we came up with this. Like, look at your screen, look at the picture, and then ask yourself, could you film this in Gütersloh? And if the answer is not 100% no, then you press the record button. But yeah, that's a little test. So just to keep in mind, like, really, is this worth to shoot? Especially,
yeah, and you can also do that during the planning phase, because you can look at the stuff and then think, oh, that's nice, but then you don't really always need to think about your hometown, but anything like in some kind of normal surrounding. Or is this really special for? Do you have to go to that far to that place to shoot this? Is this worth it? And I guess it's a good test for anybody, whether it's on location or in preparation.
I don't know if this question comes up. I have a question right now. Is there a location you really miss in the film, like where you are now watching the film, like, fuck, why didn't we spend the money to go there or spend the time to go there?
I think, weirdly enough, this question did not reach us directly, and I also think it wasn't posted as a question much, but it is in all the comments. Like,
Oh yeah,
it's everywhere that everybody says, yeah, well, you didn't go to Caucasus, or you didn't go to there, or you didn't go to there, and that's also important. I understand that criticism. As I said, a lot of what we did was subjective. Personally, I think I miss most that we didn't go to Altai. I think for the film and for the general story that we did, yes, the Caucasus and the beach regions would probably tell a more cohesive or complete story about Russia that we didn't do, unfortunately. But yeah, again, time and money. What do you guys miss?
Most do you? Yeah,
I mean, for me, it was pretty much the same. Like, when I watched the film, I don't miss anything. But of course, if we had more time, more money, I would have liked to go to Kuril Islands. I mean, like, we would have done a few drone shots, maybe a time lapse, but it wouldn't have really made a huge difference.
Many people ask this question in some form or another. Do we have a script, a theme, a direction before the shoot? Do you plan shots? Is it all run and gun? Do you just travel there, go around and search for the shots, and then this movie comes?
I think, I have to break that question down because it's a lot of different things. I think the first is like a general direction theme, I would say. I think that already manifested while I was doing all the preparation and collecting all these things. And especially after watching this whole documentary, because it really was clear to me that you can look at Russia in so many different ways. If you more look on the Soviet time or the Peter the Great time or the modern Russia, or like the youth culture now, and it's so many different views that really don't connect well with each other. And so you kind of have to, as a filmmaker in general, for any documentary, I think, like, kind of have to take a viewpoint. Then I thought, but maybe let's make that the whole theme of the film. And it kind of still is, that we're just saying, like, okay, let's have different parts of the film that have different music and different styles of filming and different styles of what they actually show, and they focus on a different stereotype or viewpoint on Russia. And then at the end, basically say, like, hey, look, we're just a couple of traveling guys, and we don't really take any of those particular viewpoints. we just present them to you, because that's kind of what filmmaking is. Like, look, we're standing here with a fog machine to make this picture. But it's, during this time, during the research, we're looking for stock footage, and we found a film, one of the most amazing ones, a documentary from Pan America, an American airline company, non-existent anymore. Film was in the 60s or 70s, I don't know. They made a full hour documentary about the Soviet Union, which is interesting in itself. Like, in that time, like during the Cold War, an American, very positive documentary about Russia. That was kind of odd. But it was very poetic in the whole writing. And this is also where the voiceover comes from, in the beginning and the middle parts of the film.
The Russians. The crisscross design of humanity that so fascinated Dostoevsky.
But that documentary had the sentence in there:
Whatever man wishes to see in our mother Russia is there to find. It just depends on how you look at it.
And I think that kind of got the direction of the film then. That was the direction that we're just, whatever way you look at it, one time we look at it that way, and then that way and that way. And at the end, we're just saying, hey, we're just three guys traveling.
But there's another voiceover. Where did you take the voice of the old woman in the second half of the film?
We did have the first voiceover already before shooting. The second voiceover we didn't really have before the shooting, but we knew that something there should be like some mystical Russian poetry. And my friend Manuel Illich, who I work with sometimes, he does read a lot of Russian literature. He did a lot of research and then suggested a couple of poems, and we chose the one from Anna Akhmatova. He was also the one that he said he has a friend who has a grandma that we could ask that could read it. And she recorded it on her phone first, and I heard it, and I was like, okay, it's pretty weird, but it's like, okay, let's give it a try. So she recorded her grandmother in a studio, and we ended up using it. That's how it all came to be.
Next question is about the song. Did you produce the song before the shooting? And if it shaped the shots in any way?
So I started out with a list of songs, like a playlist of songs, specifically for those separate parts. But that was before we went to Moscow, and I did not brief the music composers at that time. So when we started the trip to Moscow, there was no music. Before the trip to Moscow, you sent us via email the link to Polushka Polka. It's a very, yes, it's very militaristic in some form, especially this original version, but there's something about the melody that really just stuck in our heads. Like, we were running around in Moscow, like all of us, and just like whistling that tune. Yeah. So then the idea was, okay, we composed something anyways. Why? And with different parts. One is like more electronic, one is more like this, but why not combine them into one single theme and use that melody? So we actually went out and bought the rights to use the song, and then the composers at Zwei, especially Hermann, hello Hermann, thank you for all your work, that was brilliant, set out and composed something. And it took quite a while. And then I think we got the first version after the Kamchatka trip, somewhere in at the end of the year. And I think our first reaction from all of us were pretty blown away, I would say.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell is this?
I was completely blown away because, I
would say
it's very, very good. Thanks to everybody.
From that first version, the whole intro, basically, until the first break of the film, is still basically the same as it was in this first version. After that, we changed around a lot. We had an electronic part in there before, and it changed to something more, this aggressive drum part and stuff. But in general, that first part and the whole choir part was already there before we went on the last 2 trips. So to answer the question, yes, in part, the song then informed our shooting. It was done by halfway during the project. It also shaped a little bit of the edit, I would say, because there was these different parts that were already set and they didn't change much. But in this first classical part, there's this moment when everything all of a sudden gets really weird and we have all these visual effects in there and everything like glitches, and that was not in the original plan or the idea of the film. But because the music was the way it was, there's like this kind of like odd, almost disharmony in one of the chords. And it just felt like this would be super cool if we have this wonderful and clear ballet and all of a sudden everything gets kind of twisted and strange. That was informed by the music.
So yeah, let's go to the next question. What detail did you plan the shots? Or did you just shoot as much as possible in each location and hope it would be enough? That's a question of Jonas. I think we can combine these questions a little bit because many people are asking them, are you just going there and with your cameras and hope something crazy will happen, or do you plan a little bit more?
It depends on the shoot, I guess. Like, think like we have to separate that, or like we have to ask the question separately for each shoot, basically. Because in Moscow was pretty planned out. We had lots of set scenes, but for these more like nature focused trips that we did, like Baikal or Kamchatka, there weren't a lot of planned shots in there.
Thinking of the burning street or the driving around in the truck in Kamchatka where the sun sets and everything happens, we are laughing, we are in this car. This is nothing we have planned, but I think especially the Moscow part was planned out. And I remember Mux and me were walking around the city like, hey, Vincent, I think we need a little bit more random stuff. And you were like, no, it's totally fine what we're doing here right now. So that was a little bit different to the stuff we did before, I think.
You can feel which scenes were planned, like when the Russians do like the squat in front of the apartment complex. You could tell that these were not random scenes, but on other scenes, like when Matvey burned the road, it actually looked too good to just happen on random, but it really didn't plan anything. Like they parked the car there. We didn't say park it here on the perfect spot.
I think they asked, guys, what do you think of burning street?
Go ahead.
We like that.
Yeah, so I guess, that's the one level. Then there's a second level, I would say, with some of the shots, for example, with the yellow cloth, like we just brought that. It's not like exactly planned that way, but we did bring that from Germany. We're hoping to find some kind of cool scenery where we would work with that. And then at the end, this is what happened. But then the third part is, as you already alluded to, and I can just show you guys a little bit like that, how that looks, is we really had a plan for Moscow. This is basically a shot list with what we worked with. As you can see, some of the stuff we pretty much did 1-to-1. I think there's another one here from the from the Victory Museum. It's pretty much exactly the shot. This is pretty much exactly the shot from the Museum of Cosmonautics. There's other stuff that the ballet is obviously not exactly as it was, but we planned this. This is the first mood pictures for the scene with Catherine the Great. Other stuff we didn't make at all, but these guys were already in the shot list, which is fun.
And they made it.
They made it.
Also would be maybe a nice spot to talk about the drifting scene. Because
but that was never planned.
That was not planned at all. We went to Murmansk to basically just, all we wanted to do was see the Northern Lights. I mean, there were a few other things that we wanted to do, but this was it. And then the main thing, we could do it because of basically weather or Northern Lights. They didn't want to come. And then we sat at dinner one night, and then we were like, yeah, we have a bit of time. What could we do? And then we remembered that sometimes when we were just waiting on a crossroad or something, we would see people drifting. They would just say, light turns green. They would just drift around the crossroad.
We were at a restaurant sitting around like, fuck, what are we doing? You were talking about the guy who just drifted around the corner. I was looking at Instagram, watching what's happening in Murmansk. And then everybody of us found these drifting guys. And Manirko was able to get in a random Telegram group and made it happen. And then I think like 1 hour later, we found ourselves in front of a McDonald's parking lot. And 10 different cars arrived. And well, the rest you can see in the movie. But yeah. There's another question from Nikita. She's asking how much of the shown scenes and transitions were planned beforehand.
Specific transitions, I would say only in the subway. This is why we use the gimbal we all hate so much. In general, the cuts in the first section, which is the people section, we always called it, where it's just portraits of people. One portrait is like somewhere super urban, very young, and then into complete cold and into the tundra or something. So that was, I guess, a little bit planned from the beginning. I think what we already planned while we're shooting it was the scene with the red dress where it comes from day to night. That was a transition that we certainly had in mind to do. So we really needed to find the exact same spot when we filmed it at night and at day to make this transition work.
So there's another question from Lena, and she asks if we have a translator or fixer on site. Definitely yes. Perhaps you guys can refer to that a little bit.
So for Moscow and St. Petersburg, we had Andrei Manirko, wonderful guy. Thank you for everything, Manirko. For the other trips, we had a different fixer because obviously the qualifications were different. For these people, he actually plans tours to these more remote locations in Kamchatka and Baikal. So we went with him. And here in Germany, who organized everything was Lars. He also basically helped us find these fixers. And in Moscow, we also had additional help from Boris. Thank you, Boris, as well, who helped us to get in contact with the ballet and the church and these kind of things. And yes, I would say, without a doubt, it is impossible to do a film like this, especially in Russia, without a fixer. You need people who know other people, and especially you need somebody who knows the language. It was not possible for us with only English to get through.
A lot of people ask, and where did you find the actors?
It was actually a lot of research on Instagram, to be perfectly honest. A lot of people we looked up on Instagram and then basically just asked nicely. But then others were, especially friends of Manirko, because Manirko basically knows everybody everywhere. So
True.
We basically shot all his friends. We also worked with a talent agency in Moscow and in St. Petersburg to look if we needed something very specific. That was, I think, that's pretty much it.
And also some actors just fell in front of our camera.
Oh yeah, we're talking about our cook. When we went to Kamchatka, I think there was this guy Anton who is in the movie. He's the guy smoking in front of the old ships, and he was introduced to us as our cook or our chef for the trip.
The weirdest part about that, he just was with us in the car all the time, and we thought he's gonna cook, and then at some point we were like, are you actually a cook? And he's like, he was totally flabbergasted. He was like, no.
he did like, no, I cannot cook. And we were like, so okay.
So basically in the edit, what we did, he is exactly in the moment where the voiceover says, what is their occupation? Our little Easter egg in the whole film, because we did not know what his occupation was, but he was just there all the time. And he's I'd call him a friend now. Hi, Anton. And thank you, Anton, for everything. It was super fun with you.